I'm here with André Lima Araújo, and we're going to go over his career in comics as a Portuguese artist, ending up working for major American companies.
Hi, hello there. Thank you for having me, Eileen.
Hello, my name is Alin, and this is Borderless, an irregular podcast where I talk with comic book creators working outside their national industries with a focus on their craft and choices made during their career. A lot of your work is done for the American market, which is...
all of it, I think.
Before going into your work per se itself, I was curious about maybe giving a primer on comics in Portugal, so we have a better understanding of why it is that you're working for the American market.
Yeah, no, it's easy to understand because comics here in Portugal are pretty much non-existent as a market, as an industry. You have comic books that are translated here, so from all kinds of comics, really, American, French, Belgian, manga. So the three major markets are here as translations, but the market is small. So it's pretty hard to support local artists that are producing comics for Portugal alone. It's impossible. There's no artist that lives in Portugal, no comic book artist that is creating a book and selling it, and that's his livelihood, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't exist. So right away, I knew that if I wanted to make comics, I had to look for other markets. I tried here to publish something when I was in college and stuff like that. I submitted some stuff for publishers, but I never got anywhere with it. And pretty soon I understood that if I wanted to do something and make this my job and be paid and a certain amount that I could live off, I had to turn elsewhere. That's why I started in the American market and I stay there ever since.
It should be surprising because we have this, especially for American listeners, and people have this image of European comics as a whole being a big market, a boisterous industry, which is it's actually very localized.
Yes, it is big. It sells much more than the American comics, for example, but it is very much localized. Yes, it's French and Belgian publishers, and then you have Italian publishers as well. So you have artists, local artists from France, Belgium, and from Italy that can live on their own independent markets. In Spain, you have a nice industry as well, but it's much harder already to live, if you are a Spanish creator, to live just there. And on other countries like Portugal, and I'm sure Romania and others like that, you can't do it. You can work for other markets. I could work for French publishers, and I hope to do so one day, for example, or American publishers or whatever it might be, and your book might arrive Portugal or not, which is the case with most of the things that I've done. They have not arrived here. And that's it. Those are our chances, which thankfully for the internet are plenty of chances already.
Yeah, I think it opened up things a bit.
Oh yeah. If you Google me, you'll find my website. It's one of the first things that pops up. You can go there, go for creator-owned stuff, original work, and you will get a lot of stories that I was trying to put out there. And those stories, that stuff that Brian saw, for example, that's what sold me to him as a creator.
Yeah, right. Those stories on your site, like those wordless.
They have words, but I took them for the purpose because those are pitches. Those are all of them, without any exception. Those are rejected pitches for people that go and see them. And I put them on Twitter already a bunch of times and stuff like that. Those are like not all of them, but a few of them are trailers for comics. Like I present a pitch, it has a page that has the text explaining the story. Yeah, but the first thing that you see are actually like 5 pages of a comic book type story that looks like a trailer. It's it has words, usually captions, like a voiceover over moving pictures, like you see on a trailer, that gives you a feeling of what the story is like. So those are all stuff that I created, and that I keep. Some of them I keep evolving, and hopefully I will be able to publish some of them someday.
One other thing, one of them is titled Medieval Adventure BD format. I was wondering about this when you said that you had to work for the American market. What about the French market or the Belgian market?
The French market is something that I always wanted to do, and so I was I was doing, I was trying to do more creative stuff as we talked, and I was getting those pitches rejected. And I started thinking that maybe I could try the European market, because I hadn't really tried it for real for ever since I started working. And I started thinking maybe that's a good place for me to, do some of the stories that I wanted to do. And I had done a pitch for a medieval story that was rejected a few years ago. And I did it for, in this format that you spoke of, for an European publisher. I redid the story and drew these pages on the European format to present them to an European publisher. And I managed to talk to a French editor in a comics festival in Łódź in Poland. And I talked there to a writer as well. And I showed his page. The editor was very interested. He introduced me to a writer, which is called Richard Marazano. He's a pretty good writer, a great guy as well. We did a pitch together, me and Richard, that I presented like a year ago, I think, or a year and a half ago, that didn't go nowhere. And then I met another French writer of a book that I read and loved, and we created a comic book together that I still have to draw the pitch for it. And it was pretty much going to be a gig that I was going to do like next year or something. But then Brian Bendis came along, and that opportunity that I was looking for to do creative stuff suddenly just appeared, and it was not a possibility, it was a sure thing. So I had to take it, and the French comic book is right now on hold and hoping for a moment where I can get to draw the pitch for it. But it will happen sooner or later, because I want to do something there as well.
I hope you get to it, and I hope
me too.
They'll somebody will translate it to English so I could read it and to buy it, because it's very strange. The most accessible way to buy comics is to order them from the UK or from the US. Accessible in terms of language, because I mostly know English and a bit of French, but
I spoke a bit of French as well, and because I really wanted to work for the French market, I started learning French like 2 years ago. We have me and my wife, we were having French lessons from a teacher here, and now I speak a bit better, and I can read and write and stuff like that, because I wanted not only to be able to understand and speak in French, but also to write my own scripts in French as well. I mean, that's that, but it's hard to... I'm much better in English, for sure.
Yeah, so I guess that's a bit of a barrier there.
Mm-hmm.
You're an architect, right? So
yes, I am.
You did architecture university, or did you work as an architect?
I did the complete degree with a master, and then I ended up my degree in 2009. So we were in the middle of that economical crisis back then. Construction had stopped, I think, 50% here in Portugal, so opportunities were pretty low. To get work as an architect. So that was the pivotal moment for me, because I've always loved comics, but I was having an architectural degree, and I was reading and drawing some things at that time, reading a lot of comics, drawing some comics, but I always thought that I would begin my career as an architect. But the moment that I finished the degree, I looked around and I saw really pretty few opportunities as an architect to work on. And while I tried to begin a career as an architect, submitted my resume to several companies and offices and stuff like that, where I was going to job interviews and stuff like that, I thought that was maybe the moment for me to start taking comics more seriously if I ever wanted to do them. And I started to look for opportunities to submit my work and show it around to editors as much as possible. So I started looking around pretty deeply for that. And it was in that year as well, just by an extraordinary coincidence, that C.P. Cebulski was coming to Portugal to a local festival that we have here. And C.P. Cebulski is today Marvel's editor-in-chief, and he was at the time the editor that was traveling around and looking for new talent and promoting Marvel stuff. And I met him there, and I talked to him. I showed him a bunch of stuff that I have done. It was pretty awful stuff, but he still, he liked the style. So he gave me his email address, and that's when I got a door slightly open for me. I still worked for a year as an architect, and after that, but I was already with my mind on comics, and the architectural work dried up. I was working in an office, and in the end, the guy said, "Listen, we can't. We need to shrink the personnel. So you're going because you are one of the new ones." And I was by that point in the contact with CB Cebulski and with Marvel, and I was, drawing pretty much every day and every opportunity that I could, so I could get in there, because my first few submissions were rejected.
Interesting, because that you say that they were rejected, and you think your style was pretty awful, because the first things I've chronologically of you, like the FF 2022.
Yes, that's my first professional work. It's for Marvel.
I think it's pretty fully formed, and it was a very challenging issue, I think, because it had lots of characters with different body shapes, and it had kids. Which I know artists find them pretty hard to draw, and it was very emotional, which again to come into this very pivotal moment before ending the run, and nailing those characters and those emotions and those relationships between them. It was a very good job, I think.
Oh, thank you. No, because the thing is that we are talking about 2009, the end of 2009. That's when I met CB Cebulski. And then during the entirety of 2010, I worked as an architect. And at that moment, I had little time to draw. I was still drawing as much as I possibly could. And I was really, my head had completely shifted to comics by that point, throughout the entire year. But I couldn't draw as much as I wanted. But then in 2011, I went for more job interviews as an architect, because I had to make money. But I was spending all moments that I possibly could drawing. So I drew for the entirety of 2011, and I basically gave myself a self-taught comic book degree. I looked up for as much information as I possibly could. I drew as many comics as I possibly could. I created own stuff. I drew Marvel samples. I collaborated with other people. I drew a book that for a guy that paid me, that was published, I don't know, like 3 years ago or something like that only. It was a book that he paid. He was a writer. He paid me from his own pocket, and I did more illustration work for certain small things, So I was constantly evolving. It was a year of learning and of evolving. And by the end of the year, so in 2011, I was ready. And I did a sample for Marvel that was a Spider-Man sample. And I was pretty happy with it. And I can tell you that still now I stand by it. I know that one was good enough. I was rejected still. And the thing was, for me now, when an editor rejects some of my work, I never take it personally, And I think that was the architectural background, architectural degree that I have, that allowed me to really take well criticism, because in architectural school here in Portugal, in my architectural school, which is University of Minho, we are subjected to criticism from teachers and students alike for twice a month. So you stand in front of a crowd, you present your work, and then you are criticized by anyone that wants to ask questions or say something about the work. So I knew how to take criticism. And when I saw the criticism from that editor that rejected, I didn't quite get it. Why? But at the same time, later on, I think that I'm thankful for him to have rejected me, because I was frustrated then. So I drew a created own thing, 11 pages, on a slightly different style, because I was slightly Americanizing my style, and I think that was harming my chances. And I did something on my style, an anthropomorphic short story with characters in a kind of medieval fantasy setting. And I sent that right away to CB Cebulski, because the editor that had rejected me had moved on to other things. He was no longer taking samples. So I sent him to CB Cebulski, and he said that he absolutely loved it and that we needed to find something to work together. So that was on the turning from 2011 to 2012. So that's that.
Is this one of those pages on your website?
No, it's not there. It was. It's not there because it's pretty old by now, and I replaced it. There is one sample there with anthropomorphic characters, which is a second version of that story. Yes. So I kept working on that. But those pages per se, I published it online, I think, more than once. But it's old stuff now. But that was that. At that point, Sibylski told me that he loved the stuff, and but he didn't say directly that he wanted to work with me, which I took as a cue as I'll do again something creator-owned, because this worked really well. I had already done some creator-owned stuff before, the middle of the year and stuff like that. But there were still flaws, in anatomy and stuff like that. And storytelling that I felt more comfortable in the end of the year. So I thought to myself, I need to do more of this, because this is really where I can flourish my style, and I can perfect what I'm good at. And you really want to promote what you're good at, not what you think that they want to see. That's a mistake. You obviously want always to do what you can do best. And then they will try to find a gig for you, and then you will do the best that you can in that gig. So I try to do what I do best, and I did a sample I wrote and drew 10 pages for Men Plus, which is my creator-owned book. But at the time, it was the first version. I didn't use any of those pages. And I inked them, and in pretty much the style that you see nowadays, the style that you saw on FF22, obviously I've evolved, hopefully. But pretty much what you see on FF22 was on those pages, with my characters, my places, everything done by me, lettered by me, all of that. So I sent him that, and he absolutely loved it. And that's when he told me that that they wanted to work with me, and we started talking about contracts and stuff like that.
And from then, you had a few one shots. You had an Extreme X-Men, a part in Extreme X-Men that you did it all yourself. Was there a problem with scheduling there, or?
Yes, on Marvel's part, they were mistaken about the scheduling. They thought that I had, I think it was 4 weeks, which is what I used to take to draw an issue, at least 4 weeks, which is I do I can do 5 pages per week. So I need 4 weeks, basically a month to do 20 pages, a month to do a monthly book. That was the thing that I established for myself. And I was supposed to have that, but they mixed up the schedules. And when we were finishing up, we discovered that the editors discovered that they had mistakenly thought that the schedule would allow for me to draw it, and it didn't. So they needed to come to get someone in to help finish the book, because I never got any work late, never ever in my life. And that was an exception. That happened there. And I've been called later on to help some people finish some issues here and there.
And then you had a one shot on Avengers at the end of the Age of Ultron event that went into your longest run at Marvel in Avengers AI with Sam Humphries and Darmata as a colorist.
Yes, Frank Darmata.
I think the difference between the two books, the one shot and the Avengers AI, even if they're both done by you and they're both colored by Frank Darmata, I think I don't know if they're. I was shocked now rereading them in so close a span, because the Avengers one shot is. I don't think it's very you, and the Avengers AI, it's everything I think about your art style. This very large rooms with metal platings and lots of wires on the floor and cables and everything put into neat perspective. This very interesting framings of the characters and showing as much as you can, and then also these discussions that are very dense pages with characters acting and emoting and shifting their expression and hand gestures.
Because what got me that job was precisely those pages from Men Plus. They knew that I was very much into cyberpunk. Of the first version of Men Plus. So because I was the first thing that I did after I finished FF22 was asked for more work, of course. And so I had that Extreme X-Men issue lined up. I still went to New York Comic Con, talked to Cebulski and to other editors, meet people, meet new writers. It's basically something that I do every once in a while, which is I go to a convention and I try to talk to as many people as I possibly can. So I did that. And one of the things that I told CB at the time was that I wanted to do longer work. I didn't want to do just one issue and out. I wanted to do something that I could show for. So I had at the time lined up a book for Fantastic Four, which should be 4 issues long. Cebulski offered me that on the spot there on New York Comic Con, but the work fell through. They changed their minds, and they had this new book coming on, which had this, like you said, this opportunity for me to really go as sci-fi as you can go inside the Marvel universe. And they invited me to draw it, and not only to draw it, but to create it. Really, me and Sam, we co-created that book together. That book is ours, pretty much. I designed all the characters. That's why you say that it looks much more my book than everything that I did before and possibly after on Marvel, because I designed all the characters. I designed all the places as well, all the major locations, stuff that you only see on that book, really. And that doesn't appear anymore on any Marvel issue. And we went pretty crazy with it. Really, Sam, he would write things for me to draw because he looked at my stuff pretty heavily. We talked, we discussed it. He sent me his stuff, the stuff that he was reading about, in order to write the title, Avengers AI. And so we were very much in tune. Sam is one of the finest people that I've worked, and one of my friends today. We still talk every now and then. He really is a great writer, and he had many ideas and many concepts that he wanted me to explore. And I told him about stuff that I want to draw as well. So that's why all of that is there. And there was room for me to add anything that I wanted to those places. He had certain requests, that the plot dictated. But other than that, most of the stuff was up to me to draw. So for example, the beats in cyberspace, if you want to call it like that city that was in cyberspace, the places that you see where the team is reunited, everything was really up to me. So that was almost like a created on book inside Marvel universe with new characters pretty much, and we got to do pretty much whatever we wanted with it. So that's why I think it looks so distinctive, and I'm glad that it looks like that. It's something that I take great pleasure that I was able to do at a publisher like Marvel. They were very encouraging, all the editors and stuff like that. It was a fantastic moment for me, that because I was working for months as a professional, and suddenly I had this thing falling on my lap where I could do almost anything that I wanted to.
I'm glad that you had such a pleasant experience working on it. It was a very fun book. It's interesting that you say that you almost feel about it like it's almost a creator-owned book, because when I reread it now, I felt like it was almost a draft of Age of Ultron, the movie. Mm-hmm. Because it featured Vision prominently. It had that whole rampant AI that was created by the main character. The take on Hank Pym was very similar to their take to Tony Stark in the movie, with the mental health issues and such. It felt very, very similar in a way, and
it is, because it is a book that comes directly from Age of Ultron, so there's no escape from that. And it is a Marvel book, of course, so it is. Those are the characters.
Yeah, but wasn't it? It was done before the movie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Listen, we know that for the Marvel movies and the DC movies and stuff like that, they mine the entire book library for inspiration and to take scenes and bits apart and stuff like that. So, and for example, if you look at Vision's design in the movie and the design that I made for this book, you will see that it is pretty similar as it can get, really. They use the same design bits that I use for Vision. It looks the same. It just has a different texture on his suit. But other than that, It's the same thing. Even the detail of the diamond on his chest and stuff like that. If you take notice, it is more robotic looking. So that is, for example, I think that there's a good possibility that it came from the book. If not, it's just a nice coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of coincidences. Also, in that book, there's a scene where they're in the Washington Monument and it collapses. That's is again very reminiscent to a scene in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and later on in Spider-Verse, the scene at the end of, I don't know, issue 3 or 4 when they meet in the cemetery. That's almost the same with the scene in the movie. I was wondering how do you feel about these things? Are you like do you feel proud that you see them on the big screen? Would you like to have at least some kind of official recognition? Or
well, they do. I said that it might be a coincidence because they do credit when the writers and artists when they are taking directly from a certain book.
Yeah.
They appear on even on Captain America. I think that Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting, I think they appeared on the movie, or at least Ed Brubaker. I think he had a cameo there, and their name appears on the credits and stuff like that. So that's there, and I think it's pretty fair. I'm not sure what was taken. I never noticed that. I never paid much attention to the coincidence that you said between our book and the movie, but I think that if they had taken directly, I probably wouldn't give even some kind of nod in credits. I don't know how I feel about it. I worked for Marvel and I knew pretty well what the contract was like. I work for them. I get paid by the page, and that's it. I don't get anything else. So I don't think much of it, and I know that they can use the work that I've done for anything. It's explicitly said on the contract that they will use it for printing and for anything else that they see fit. Advertisement or the designs that I did, for example, they can be used for something else, for a video game, stuff like that. It is what it is. It is the job that I've done at the time under that contract. I really see this as practical as you possibly can. I don't hold any kind of grudges or stuff like that, or keep seeing, oh my God, look, the vision is exactly like mine. I should have been paid for this. No, it is the nature of the job that I've done at the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I think it would be hard to keep on working otherwise,
exactly
for your own sanity.
Listen, I've had at Marvel, I've had a really pleasurable experience throughout all the time that I've been there. I've worked with a lot of editors. I have heard many people telling horror stories, working on the industry with certain publishers, certain editors, this and that. I've never had one issue with anyone there, or at DC, where I'm working presently, most directly. I've never had anything really with anyone, only good working relationships. And I think that's thanks to me being a good professional and to them being a good professional. It's it goes both ways. So it's really, I've been at the time of my life really working on this industry.
Cool. That's very good to hear. After you said the first FF book, Fantastic Four book, didn't really get going, but after Avengers AI, you kind of returned to FF on the Ultimate FF.
Mm-hmm.
This time colored by Rachel Rosenberg.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty long collaboration. I think she colored you on a lot of other books.
She colored me on a lot of things. She colored me on. I have a trouble recalling, but I think that's on Ultimate on a Spider-Verse stuff.
Secret War Spider-Verse and on Spidey.
Yeah, we worked together on a few things. Yes.
And that's a period when Marvel, I think, really shifted the coloring styles, and going from Darmata to Rosenberg is pretty clear.
Yeah, it is. It was at the time we were with Frankie. I was really happy. I think that book still looks great. And with Rachel too, she was a great collaborator, and everything that I asked for, she did it, but we were both extremely pressed on time at the time when we were working. I started working on Ultimate FF in the middle of on issue 3, I think, or 4. So it was on the middle of the book. We had to do it right away. So sometimes on this monthly schedule, you don't have time to. She doesn't have time to adjust to me. I don't have time to adjust to her. We just get to see what each other did, and just go back and forth a couple of times, and that's it. It needs to move out, So there's that. Sometimes things work really well with certain people. Sometimes things don't work with other people. Nowadays I do, but at the time, I didn't always have a say on colorists and stuff like that. Even though things work pretty well with her and with Frankie, and I don't really have any complaints. Certain styles apply better to my work than others. That's obvious.
I liked it. I liked her colors on you. I think they fit a lot. They really.
I like her colors very much as well. I was not, saying that she was worse than anyone else. Just saying that with sometimes in some books you have more time to discuss color approach and stuff like that. Some others you don't, unfortunately. And on those books, I can't even remember if what kind of notes we traded and something like that. And on others, like on Avengers AI, I remember requesting specific things to the editors to send to Frank D'Armata, for example.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, with Frank, did you get to collaborate with the colorist or?
Oh yeah, particularly after a while that I was drawing. I think that it started with Arcia Rosgar, which he worked for Marvel as well, but we worked together on my book, Man Plus. So that was the first time that I asked Arcia for a couple of specific basic things, and I knew that he was pretty competent, so I didn't have to. I chose him because I really thought the best of him, and I still think. And he did just an absolutely outstanding job, and we worked pretty closely together. But in the end, he was so good that I didn't have to say much to him. And then I came back to Marvel, and I did a few things for them as well. And it was particularly after Generation Gone that I worked with Chris O'Halloran. And I've been working with him pretty much ever since on everything that I've done for Marvel and for others as well. Covers for example, Mark Miller books that I've done a few. I've worked with Chris almost exclusively ever since then. And we talk a lot about whatever it is that we are doing together, whenever it is that we work together.
Mm-hmm. Back to Man Plus, because I'm really interested about that book. That was published through Titan, right?
Yes.
I was curious if the Titan edition is the first published edition, or if it was published somewhere else.
No, it is Titans. It's the first one. The thing about that was, remember when I was talking about that I did the first version of Man Plus that I submitted to CB Cebulski, and my idea at the time was that I was going to do that to really explore my style, but not only that, but to have a sample that could work both ways. So it could be a Marvel sample, so they could analyze it and see if I was good enough or not in their eyes. And I could submit it as a creator-owned story to publishers for them to see. So maybe if one didn't work, the other one would. They both worked. Man Plus was approved. Then I went to an English Comic-Con. I think it was Capao Comic-Con. It lasted for a couple of years. It was organized by Mark Miller and others. It was pretty cool. And I submitted that sample there as well. And it was already approved by Marvel, but I was still waiting to get the first gig from them. I already had a contract signed with them and everything, but I wanted to try and get the creator thing rolling right away as well. So I submitted it there. And Titan as a publisher already existed, and they were trying to get into comics. And at that moment, their idea was to publish creator-owned stuff, mostly. They then... While we were working on the book, and now it has completely changed, but they were already shifting then their attention into licensed books, stuff that they do with from other movies and video games and stuff like that. And they have very few creator-owned stuff now.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I thought that it might have been published somewhere else, because
no, it was because they shifted their Their initial idea was to do that. I talked to a couple of editors there. One of them was the editor of the book, Steve White, and they were very much interested right away in doing it. They said, let's do this. They just told me that we need to the comics line is getting started, so we will need a few months. And I told them, fine, I'm going to start working at Marvel as well, so that will always be helpful for anything creator that I do down the line. And then we can go from there, because I can write the script and design the characters while I'm working for Marvel, and then I will eventually find a moment to stop and draw Man Plus. And I did it after I finished Avengers AI. I talked to the people at Marvel. I remember meeting with C.V. Cebulski in Leeds in the festival there. And I talked and I told him that if it was possible, because I was under an exclusive contract then. But when I signed the exclusive contract, I asked them if they could add an exception for Man Plus, because I had already showed it to Titan, and they said that they wanted to publish it. So I had in my exclusive contract an exception for Man Plus, and it was a 2-year contract. And it was after the end of the first year that I asked them if I could, take a break and draw Man Plus, because I really wanted to do that. And they were, again, incredible people, fantastic, really understanding. And I told C.V. Cebulski, he said right away, yeah, sure, because we want our creators to be happy. And if this is what you really want to do, we will be here waiting for you when you finish it. You go, you do it. And I did. And so then we published it through Titan only, I think, a year and a half later, because they shifted their plans so much that they were having trouble to find a place to publish it. Because I think that it was published in 2016 when it was finished like a year before by then.
It almost came out of nowhere.
The launch of the book was pretty it was botched up a bunch of times, because they shifted so much their focus into licensed books that they announced the book for one day, then they delayed it. It was all there on their side, that because I finished the book like more than a year before it was launched. It was ready on the first day that we had, and it was delayed a couple of times, and we really, I think, missed the ideal launch, which would be me stopping work for Marvel, me promoting it a bit on the social media, so showing a few panels and people starting to get interested, and then it died out completely because it was finished. I was not talking about it anymore, or I was just showing a couple of things. And when it was launched, I was already distant from it, really. I had finished it for a very long time, and you really feel that progress that you many times see on comics. Creators start talking, oh, I'm working on a new project, and the project is called this, and then the project is announced, and then you start showing a few pages, and we did all of these steps, and then we delayed launch for a bunch of months, and it harmed the book, I think, quite well, because it had vanished from people's collective memory by then.
Yeah, it kind of killed the momentum. So it didn't do really well financially because of this.
No. Yeah, I know. No, it's not because of that only. Of course, creator-owned books, some sell very little, and this one sold very little. I'm not blaming Titan for it selling very little. I wished it had launched before, because I wanted to get it out as soon as possible, as you said, to not kill the momentum that we were building with all the announcements and stuff like that. But it sold very little because, well, people didn't buy it. People didn't find it interesting enough to buy it. It happens to a lot of creator-owned stuff and to corporate stuff as well. And it is the nature of the game. Sometimes you catch this perfect moment to launch stuff, and things pick up on sales for whatever reason, and sometimes they don't, and it's always quality work, and sales do not match the quality of the book. I still stand by it. I think it's a good book. You can still get it if you want, but it didn't sell for a multitude of reasons. God knows how many and what they were. It was not, of course, entirely Titan's blame, so that didn't help. That's for sure.
Yeah. It already doesn't feel very, I don't know, sellable towards what the American market is really looking for. It feels very much like a passion project, and you're distilling your influences into it. And I think those influences are in a way quite obvious. Like it's very much. I think of it Shiro designs with Jiro Taniguchi storytelling.
I hadn't thought of that one.
Yeah, because so the designs are very Shiro, yeah, and some of the rendering as well. I think it's very much from Shiro, and Taniguchi has that very clear, clean architectural design. Those spaces that you basically can traverse.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's it comes from my background. I've always being an architect. I think about that a lot. And yes, Jiro Taniguchi, I love him, but I didn't thought about him when I was doing this. But it's interesting that you can spot that there. I'm pretty happy actually that you said that, because his work is always so calm and contemplative and stuff like that. And Man Plus is a lot of bombastic action. But as you said, the clarity of the progression of the story for me, it's key. Understanding where the characters are moving from, even in the space that they are in, understanding that they are entering a certain door and that they are in the next panel is behind them. And then you see them moving into the room and you understand their position all the time in relation to the place that they are in. That's pretty important to me, because I don't want the reader to be confused, what's happening, where are they now? They were sitting, now they are standing. I always want that moment to moment to feel as clear as possible, so you can keep up with the plot and don't have to bother with making an effort to understand. I want my stories to be pretty clear.
Yeah, the action sequences are really well done, and I think that these two main influences, I think, aren't really appreciated by the American public. I think, like, of course, Ghost in the Shell is a very popular film, but the Ghost in the Shell comics, I think, I see mostly artists talking about them. I think Shiro to Western audience is very much an artist. I don't.
Maybe I think it sells a lot, but I think that a lot of people are pretty disappointed when they come from the movie to the book, because the book is not what the movie is like.
Yeah,
it's very different. First of all, it's a collection of short stories. What most people don't know when they pick it up. The chapters are closed stories. It's like a episode for a TV show. That's what it is. And the movie is pretty much based on the last short story, and that's it. The puppeteer, the main character, the main villain of the movie, only appears on the first story. I don't think it appears on any other story. And some stuff that he does is pretty weird as well. I think the American, first of all, there is a lot of sexual content there. I think that the American version has a couple of pages that were taken out, where there is out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere, there's a pornographic scene on the comic. It's when Motoko, it's on the boat with a friend, and it's a virtual boat. She's with a couple of her girlfriends, and they start having sex out of nowhere. And it's very explicit stuff. And they took that bit out of the book. And he has a lot of that coming out of nowhere. Even the storytelling that he does is not entirely clear. For example, if you read Ghost in the Shell 2, the second book, it's almost incomprehensible what he stopped.
Yeah, I couldn't get into that. Ghost in the Shell is not even my particularly my favorite Shiro book. So I like the first Apple Seeds.
Yeah, the Apple Seeds are really good.
And I really like Orion, which.
Yeah, Orion is very good as well, art-wise as well. And the other one, now I forgot. What is the name of the other one with the police? Yes, I can remember them. Well, that one is pretty good. And another one that is pretty good, and it's the best Ghost in the Shell book, is the Ghost in the Shell 1.5. Have you read that one?
No, I skipped that one.
No, read it, because it's episodic again. And but it has the best stories, the most clearly told stories. It's very easy to understand and to read and to go through. And it has some fantastic procedural police stuff. It doesn't get lost in high concepts or crazy scenes or anything like that. It's just the police doing its job. And it's really a good book. It's the best Ghost in the Shell book, actually.
I'll check it out. But I like some of the high concept, like
It's all over the place, the book, and I love it for that. But going back to what we were talking about, you were right. That doesn't sit very well with American audiences, which we know are very formatted to a certain type of storytelling, and that they see in movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So yeah, my sensibilities are, I love comics from all places. I like American comics, I like European comics, and I like Japanese comics. And that all comes into play when I'm telling a story. And I think that caused me some problems in terms of getting work, in getting different types of work, not getting work because I always got work whenever I asked for it. I'm always on time. I think that I draw well, and I think that I can tell a good story. So that carried me over throughout the entire time that I've been working on it. But I've heard from colleagues and friends that telling me that some editors have trouble in finding a place for me because they see my stuff and they try to find something that plays well with my sensibilities. That you see a lot of a lot of European stuff and Japanese stuff on top of what I'm doing on American. And I think that yes, the more that I get to take control of the story, the more those influences will appear, and that might be a hinder. At some point, particularly in the beginning of my career, into selling my books a bit more and in me getting bigger and jobs with a bigger profile, which I always tried at Marvel, but I always had trouble too, getting a bigger book, a book that sells more, getting a Spider-Man book, stuff like that. I think that you're right on that. But at the same time, I think that as an artist, you need to do what you're good at, and you need to do what feels the best to you. And you need to really put your personality all in. I think it's the best way to do things. And in the beginning, it's going to be difficult. In the beginning, it's going to be hard to really find your style, to really sell your stuff to an editor, to really show that you can draw Batman or Superman or Spider-Man on your style and make it sellable for them, for an audience. But in the end, when you go, through all the hard work to really perfect your style, to really perfect the way that you do things, when you start getting better opportunities, you get an opportunity to shine because it will be completely different from all the other stuff that's around you, and it will be completely yours and completely recognizable. And I think that's priceless, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah, that's a very good ideal. I have one more question about Man Plus, and I was kept wondering about this ever since I read it. Is it in any way kind of especially because you mentioned all the weird out of nowhere sex stuff in Shiro, was it in any way a sort of reaction to it, like the way you drew the android and the android?
No, not a reaction to it. It certainly shows what I care about in a story, and it does that stuff on Shiro, for example. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't put me off in terms of, oh, I don't want to read this anymore. This is stupid. I don't think of it like that, because whenever I see a creator doing whatever he wants, like he's clearly doing on that book,
yeah,
I'm happy. I'm happy with that. I'm happy whenever I see a creator doing exactly what he wants to do, and he clearly is doing pretty much what he wants to do, because that scene, as we talked, is out of nowhere. So he got in there because he really wanted to draw that, and I'm fine with that. It does nothing for me, I don't think it adds anything to the story, for example, in that particular moment. And I think that if you take that page out like they did in an American edition, you are not going to notice if you're reading it for the first time. It adds nothing to the story. It brings nothing to the characters, because Motoko is really a cool and good character that he developed and he created. And on my work, because that stuff doesn't do anything for me, I don't include it as much, which doesn't mean that I will never draw a sex, something like that. But I only put stuff that I feel that adds something, that in my view brings something to the story and helps to develop characters and the situations and the plots and the places and stuff like that. So it was not a reaction to that, but I think that you can say that it shows my sensibilities well and what matters to me when I'm doing a book, which is putting the story first always.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Because you mentioned the fact that editors had a hard time fitting you in. I'm gonna skip a bit. I really noticed this in Spidey because you came after Nick Bradshaw, and Bradshaw has this very remarkable style, very Art Adams influence style.
Yeah. It's very, very good.
But he's doing superheroes the way we think of them, and even his the teenage Spidey of the book is drawn with very pronounced musculature and shaded muscles and so on, and even the artist who came after you on the title, who has a very cartoony style, still drew Spidey with pronounced muscles, like a very skinny body, but with very lean but still strong muscles. The muscles were seen, and yours is very much defined by the silhouette, his movement in the space. Well,
that was, the way Spider-Man has always been my favorite Marvel character, and that's the way that I see him, because I think that it's very interesting to draw him, and I prefer to assign different types of bodies to different types of characters, and Spider-Man is not really the muscular type of character, I feel. So I drew him a bit more like that. On Spidey, I have to say, I had one of my favorite Marvel gigs at the time, which was to work with Robbie Thompson, the writer. And Robbie's a great guy. I talked to him this past year on New York Comic Con. We had a blast looking at each other's work, the stuff that I'm doing now. We saw some of it. And Robbie's just a great guy, a guy that we keep promising each other that we will work together again someday. And he wrote sometimes you get scripts that are just perfect because you don't have to do the layouts, almost draw themselves. And he really knows how to write a comic book, and he knows when to get out of the way of the artist. And there's a page, for example, a spread that I think it's a bit famous for people that enjoy my work, which is the one that Spider-Man is going through a building in profile.
I'm looking at it right now.
So that page, it was like 2 lines in the script. It was just saying that Spider-Man goes through a building. That's it. And I drew. So I had the possibility of drawing that section of the building as I wanted. I drew it as a section so you could see the hole that he's making. Of course, this is a very cartoony and kind of all ages book, so it's a bit less realistic. And it was a fantastic time to do it. But yeah, I agree that I always do. All artists do, but my stuff is certainly different from the typical American comics. It's not better or worse, it's just different.
Did that spread take you a long time? Because it's very...
Yes, it did.
It's very detailed and...
Yes, I tend to go all in, on those things. And I think that writers have noticed that, so they always, whenever I come to a book, I feel like they go back to the script and find places for me to draw cityscapes as much as they possibly can. And I always, when drawing a building or a crowded scene or a city, I always go with as much detail as I possibly can. It takes a long time, yes.
So, because Spider-Man is your favorite character, did you enjoy working on Spider-Verse, on the Secret Wars miniseries?
Yeah, that was assigned to me because you see that I have a bunch of Spider-Man type books that I've done throughout the years, because I've always told Marvel people, all of the editors that I was working with, and whenever they asked me, or even if they hadn't asked me, I was always telling them that I wanted to work with Spider-Man. And it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. Those books are usually fun for me for 2 reasons. First of all, because drawing in the Marvel universe is always fun, but also because they have a lot of obscure characters that I don't know of, and I get to learn about whenever I'm working on the books.
Those Secret Wars miniseries were kind of my jumping off point from Marvel for a bit. Because a lot of stories ended then with Secret Wars, and I liked a lot of the miniseries. They felt very satisfying to me. They had really good creator teams on them. The Spider-Verse one is among them. I think I really like them. And I haven't read that much Marvel since then. I caught up on some stuff with Marvel Unlimited and such, but I think that's a moment where I lost track on Marvel.
Oh, listen, I don't keep track on anything really. My reading habits are all over the place. I just see something that I enjoy and I pick it up. Sometimes something new that it gets my eye. Sometimes it's something 20 years old or 40 years old, whatever it is. So I read all over the place, and it's impossible to keep up with it, for me to keep up with everything that's going on a monthly basis.
And how do you manage, because you have quite a few one shots and annuals and fill-in issues, and a lot of them are on books with lots of characters. Like you had a few on Inhumans, and then another two on all new Inhumans. And I don't know, is it hard to jump in like that?
Yes, it is pretty hard. It's pretty hard to do a book like that, for, like you said, with many characters and with characters that I don't always know them, so I need to look at a lot of references and stuff like that. And the first few pages are always pretty hard for me, because I need to be constantly looking at the computer, what the character looks like, what the places look like in the previous issues, because I try to keep the continuity as much as possible. And it is pretty hard too, because you put on a lot of work in getting those issues done, and then it's done and you don't get back to it. So the easiest way to work is certainly to be on the same book from the beginning, and if possible, you creating the looks of the things. Whenever you have to refer to work that other people have done before you, to a lot of new characters for me in this case, that I was not used to draw, that I didn't know how to draw, it does take a toll on the first few pages, because again, there's no time, for you to sketch these characters for 5 days and get to know them and get to memorize their costumes, their poses, their powers. You need to go right in. I start drawing them immediately, almost. You get the gig in one day. They say, do you want to do this? You say yes. They send you immediately the script. They send you a date. It's usually I only have the 1 month to do it. So, it's hard sometimes, yes.
Do they send you references or?
Yeah. The editors are fantastic. They will send me anything that I ask for.
Even sketches or guides or?
Sketches and the previous. They will send me. Editors are pretty good at this. Marvel editors are pretty good, and DC editors as well. In which they don't. They don't say, oh, that's what you're looking for. It's on issue 8. Here it's issue 8. No, if I ask for a reference for a certain character, they will send me that page, that specific page on that issue where he appears. Or if they have design sheets, they will send me those as well. They usually, for a new book, they send you like a small package of references with a bunch of JPEGs, which contain a few pages and a few character sheets, and they always say, if you need anything more, just tell us, and whenever I ask, they will send me the specific thing that I'm asking for to make my job as easy as possible.
Nice. Another thing I wanted to say about the Spider-Verse book, the architecture influence is obvious and quite visible in your work, but I really liked the body language of the characters in that
thanks.
In that miniseries. It's linked a bit with the way you're rendering characters in the sort of almost the opposite of the heroic, super heroic way, because they are so defined mostly by their silhouette, by their contours, and and the gestures of their body are so expressive and specific.
Oh, thanks, because that's one of the things that concerns me the most, which is you usually have these certain poses that characters are known for.
Yeah.
And you can fall into that trap of drawing the same pose for pages on end. You have the classic standing pose, the classic pointing pose, the classic punching pose, and stuff like that. So I always try to mix that up as much as possible and think of the character, what the character is, if the character is more acrobatic or stronger, or how does he punch, how does he kick, how does he move, how does he sit, how does he eat. All of those things for me are important, particularly the mundane aspects, which we usually don't see as much. And I like drawing that as much as possible to make the story feel a bit more natural and less more lifelike.
So did you ever do life studies?
Yeah, on my degree, we did that. We had a class that was drawing for 2 years, and we did a lot I'll just say naked model, where naked people are in front of you and you have to draw them. That's a pretty common thing on drawing classes. We did a lot of that.
Oh, really? Really? Or in architecture?
Yeah. Because here's the thing. For anyone that likes architecture, they will know a couple of architects here in Portugal, which are Cisa Vieira and Souto Moura, and they are from Porto. And Porto type of learning comes from a very artistic background. And our school, which is in a nearby city, comes from the same background. All the teachers, when I was on my school, came from Porto as well. So they came from that artistic background. And the arts are, painting and drawing and all that kind of stuff has a lot of weight in the first few years of the degree. You need to the drawing discipline was the hardest discipline that I had in that degree, apart from the main one, which was called project, which was just making buildings.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So my partner also did architecture, and from what she says, the Minco University is also one that's more on the artistic side of architecture. But from what I get, what artistic means to them is a lot of conceptual stuff, a lot of I think more a modern conception of art, like installations and.
Yeah, we had that as well, very much in terms of we had several types of classes, and some were the end product, let's put it like that, could be very artistic, and the final models of the buildings, some were very abstract and conceptual, unless it was specified that it couldn't be. And the beginning of the projects that we were doing, we had to do museums and houses and stuff like that. The first few things were very free. In terms of the way that you could do them. You could just show up with a blank piece of paper with one stroke of a brush, and you say, this is my concept, and you could spend 1 hour explaining your concept. That was allowed. That was severely criticized as well after. But we had the freedom to make those mistakes or to just nail it if you really had a good concept and if you had a really good piece that explained that concept. So that was not only the drawing discipline, but we had that just artistic kind of discipline that had no architectural direct link other than teaching you how to draw.
Yeah, that's very interesting and a bit surprising, because you mentioned a lot of you talked about being in control of your work, and you mentioned Generation Gone. I don't know, can you say a few things about that one?
Oh yeah, that was my favorite thing in the world, and I think that most creators will tell you that, is create your own stuff. And I wanted to do more, and I was trying to find ways to do more, and I got a message from Alex Scott, the writer, telling me that he really liked my stuff, and if I wanted to do something with him, and we started to talk, and he explained me an idea that he had, and he asked me stuff that I wanted to draw, that I was interested on drawing, and we went back and forth. And he had a good thing going at Image Comics, where he could, with a lot of freedom there, and he still does. And so we got to do that book together, which was a pretty good experience as well, in terms of being able to design an entire book exactly as I wanted it to be, and going back and forth with the writer and creating the characters and the world and all of that, and drawing all the things, all the taking care of all the storytelling beats, and have that kind of freedom on the page count and stuff like that. So that's always something that I'm very interested in, because it gives you an absolute freedom in terms of, and you get that on comics more than anywhere else. On basically only if you write books, I think you can have the same kind of freedom, because other than that, you are dependent on, if you do movies, you are dependent on hundreds of people to get a movie done. Comics is one of the most interesting places if you want freedom to do a story. So we got that on Generation Gone as well, which was a pretty satisfying project. I think in the end, we got a really good book.
Yeah, this is one of the things I like about comics, and one of the reasons I started this podcast, because the way comics are created bear some resemblance to the way bigger productions are created. Like they can have this sort of assembly line production where everyone is a piece in a bigger machine that does their job and so on. But even when there's the case, everybody leaves their mark much more than they would do in a movie or in a video game or somewhere else. Even if there's a commercial comic where some editor commissions a writer and the writer gives the script to an artist and then the artist goes through an inker and the colorist and the letterer, every piece of them is very visible on the page there.
That's exactly one of the, I think that the best things about comics for me is that it's two things really. Is that one, you can do whatever you want to do. There's really nothing holding you back, which is not true in other places, because you have budgets, you have things that you can't do on your own. But on a comic book, if you are, for example, like me, I write and I draw, I can do whatever I want really in any book if I get the chance to, or even if I'm working like I'm working right now with Brian Bendis, we are creating this book together, and he's writing and I'm drawing it. We are doing just whatever we want really, and we have space, both of us, to just explode on this book. It's my favorite thing. And then the second thing is that you also get that if you write novels, for example, you can write whatever you want, but on comics I get to show you what I want to show you exactly the way that I want you to see it. I don't say that the ship is big, I draw the ship big, and that type of control, I think it's fantastic for you. It's a different medium, of course. The other one is, again, not better or worse, it's just different, and I prefer the way that we can do things on comics for those reasons.
Yeah, but in novels you lose the collaborative aspect of the work that everything else has, be it movies, theater, whatever else.
On comics, that's a great thing about the work that I'm doing right now with Brian Benz, for example, is that we are really pushing each other. I think we give each other as much space as you possibly can. And at the same time, we keep challenging each other with ideas. We are always, sending messages and emails with new ideas and new things. And it's really, I can tell you right now, this book is absolutely the best thing that I've ever done in my life by a mile. I've never done anything like it. It's just amazing to work with someone, for example, because I can write a book and I have many ideas to write books on my own. But I also want to work with people like Brian that really challenge me and push me beyond what I thought that I could do.
I've seen a giant stack of pages of boards on Twitter. Is it a graphic novel or a miniseries, or can you say?
Yeah, it's going to be in issues, and it's going to be like a curtain book, like you see. We are not entirely sure how long it's going to be yet. We are still working on that. We already have, but we have done. We know that it's going to be divided into issues at the beginning, at least, and then we will see where we go from there. But we already have 76 fully done pages of artwork. We just haven't announced anything yet. We should have announced it, or should be able to announce it pretty soon. But we, because of the COVID-19 thing, all comic conventions went down. Brian was going to go to one of those conventions and announce the book there. But we lost that opportunity, as everyone lost many opportunities and many things throughout this confusion and this mess. But we should be able to show something sooner rather than later, I hope, because I have been working on this for months and only like 4 or 5 people have seen anything from it.
I hope things pick up and we can see it, because it sounds really, really exciting. And
I'm really excited, for people to see what we have been doing.
Yeah, and I'm really interesting because you have a particular way of doing things, and Bendis has his way, and I'm really curious what comes out of that collaboration.
I can tell you that if I was doing this book on my own for some reason, which I would never, because we came up with the idea together. But if I was designing this book without Brian Bendis involved in any way, shape, or form, you would see exactly the same thing. So I have the space to do exactly what I want to do, the way that I want to do. And on top of it, I've got Brian writing and creating this book with me, and he is doing the things exactly the way that he wants to do them. And he's being as Brian Michael Bendis as possible, and I'm being me as possible, and that's the most exciting thing about this book, I think.
Awesome. Coming back a bit on the Marvel work, there's a bit of a pattern in how your the genres, let's call it, of the kinds of work you've done. Like you had this sci-fi period, and then the Spider-Man period.
Uh-huh.
And then you started a bit of a cosmic period. You had a strip in the Thanos annual with Karen Gillan.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the Silver Surfer annual, and some Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. Is this just how it happens, or do you want to shift gears a bit?
No, I'm thankful for shifting gears. I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again, that's for sure. But it's not. I never thought of it like that. It's funny that you say it because it's true. But I think that it has a lot to do with what Marvel is doing, not as much with what I am doing. It has more to do with what their line is going through at that moment, and they move, into what people are asking for. And that, for example, cosmic stuff was with Avengers and Thanos in the movies and Guardians of the Galaxy that really made the cosmic stuff come back in full force, in full strength to the comics. And that meant that more opportunities came on those books. So they were giving more opportunities to those books to being greenlighted at Marvel. And I think that's really where it comes from. There are more opportunities on those specific books, other than me really saying, hey, listen, I want to do more cosmic stuff. I'm usually open to whatever they throw at me because, I wanted to do as much as possible there. And I think I cover almost all characters, if not all characters, at least all types of characters and all types of books that they have there. And I've always been happy moving around. If I didn't have a title that I was doing like Avengers AI, I was happy, moving around titles and doing those sections, like you said, the sci-fi, the Spider-Man, and the cosmic stuff, and I enjoyed it. And I ended up with Black Panther as well.
I think one of the last issues of Spidey you had Black Panther as a guest character, and then
yes.
And then you went into, or I don't know if you went into, but the next thing that got published was. Or among the next thing that got published was the Black Panther miniseries?
It's a good question because I can't remember exactly how it was as well. But I did an Old Man Logan issue. I did a Ben Reilly issue. And I did Black Panther right after. And then I got back to do a couple of more of Ben Reilly. Again, a Spider-Man type character.
Regarding the Black Panther, the city really brought to mind the Appleseed.
It's a very sci-fi city. It wasn't it. The movie that came out at that time, I think. I remember seeing it, a couple of shots from the movie to see what type of city I was going to draw. And also the writer, Nnedi Okorafor, she sent me a bunch of references as well because she's Nigerian American, so she's very much into African art and African types of cities, and we wanted to give an African look to it all, and not just a generic science fiction look to it. So it's that I think came out well as well in the book.
Interesting, yeah. And how did you make the jump to DC, or why did you make the jump to DC?
Oh, there's no particular reason. I was working for Marvel at the time when I was approached by Brian Bendis. He sent me a message or an email. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I can't remember exactly if you sent me first or the editor sent at his request. One of those things happened, and it was he asked me to do, because he had seen my stuff, and he asked me to do 5 pages for Legion, which was being launched at the time. And he had these 2 big issues, Legion of Superheroes Millennium, number 1 and number 2. And he chose the artists that he thought fitted better each of the chapters of the book, that were like, not chapters, sections, like 5 pages for one artist, 3 pages for other, 6 for other, it depended. And the book opened up with Jim Lee, for example. It is a bunch of amazing artists that were either just some of the biggest artists on the American market, like Jim Lee, or others that were longtime collaborators with Brian Bendis, and of course, big artists as well. And he asked me, I think I'm the only new guy there. And he just liked my stuff, and that was it. And I got the invitation from him, and we really hit it well together. Just we worked. I remember getting the script for those 5 pages, and he talked directly to me to tell me to be comfortable with it. He wrote it specifically for me. So Brian was really my entry door for DC, and I had been trying to do something there as well, not because I was displeased with Marvel, but because I have only worked with Marvel for in my entire career, except for Man Plus and Generation Gone, and I wanted to have a bit more connections on more places.
And an issue of Wicked and Divine, right?
Oh yeah, I did an issue of Wicked and Divine as well. I was invited by Kieran Gillen and by Jamie McKelvey to draw that issue because Kieran, I had been going back and forth with some emails, and I'd showed him some of my stuff, and he knew that I was very much into history and historical stuff. So that's when that opportunity came. But again, it was a one-off thing. I knew that it was not going to repeat. So I wanted to do something there, and it was a coincidence that you wrote me. And that was the first thing that we did, that I did at DC, was with Brian because of Brian Bendis. And then I enjoyed it so much that I told him, listen, we need to do something else together. And I told him, and I sent him the final page. I said, there it is, Brian, I really enjoy this. Could we please, I would be very pleased if we could do something together again in the future. And if I'm not mistaken, I went back to do something at Marvel. I got an offer to do a short story for Wolverine. And he wrote me the next day and told me, listen, I really liked what I saw here. Call me. And he gave me his number. So I called him and we talked, and he told me, listen, I have this thing at DC where I do Jinx World here and I do the DC stuff. And I really like what we did together. So do we want to do something together again? Because I really do as well. And I told him, of course I do. And he asked me, do you want to do anything at DC or Created Own? And I immediately said, Created Own. So in the meanwhile, we also did a short story for DC for Young Justice with the origin of the Green Lantern from that book, from Young Justice. And we were already conceiving our book, going through concept and ideas and stuff like that. And this is really how I got to work with DC and Brian.
Yeah, that's really interesting. On DC, I'm even less well read, especially the recent stuff, because comics are very expensive.
Oh yeah, and they are so many that it's impossible to keep up with all the stuff.
With Marvel, I have the Marvel Unlimited, and at least I have access to a lot of comics. The DC Universe app is not available in Romania. Is it available there in Portugal?
I use Comixology to read digital comics. If whatever comes through there, I either want it or not, and I don't use specific apps of each publisher.
Yeah, I use that as well, but I mostly buy larger collections and older stuff that has a lot of more value bang to the buck.
Yeah, I understand that, because it's pretty expensive to buy new issues.
Yeah, and with the newer stuff, I'm like, and I haven't read much of the Bendis stuff when he came to DC. Mm-hmm. I think only the first Superman volumes, and I liked what I've read of them. Like he brought a new wind to the Superman character and franchise.
Oh yeah, he's doing fantastic things with it, with all the stuff that he's doing with the character, the question about the identity and stuff like that. It's just, he takes his risks and he owns those risks and the consequence of the things that he writes.
And I think the artists he started to work with kind of forced him to get out of a bit of the lull he got into at Marvel. They're very different to the artists that he collaborated with before.
Yeah, he said that was one of the reasons that he went to work at DC, was because he had done so many things at Marvel already that he wanted to start something fresh and new and challenging, and certainly, going to a book like Superman is pretty challenging and interesting as a creator.
So this comic that you're doing with him, I don't know if I'm undelicate. How does the money stuff work? Like, is he paying you for it, or do you?
No, yeah, we get paid an advance page rate.
By the publisher, by DC?
Yeah, Jinx World is included is deal with DC.
And they're giving you an advanced. Okay.
Yeah, that's how it
works. That's really good.
Yeah, because otherwise it would be impossible to do a creator-owned book.
Yeah, I'm wondering how a lot of this stuff works.
Yeah, for example, for Image, for Generation Gone, you sometimes at Image you sometimes can get advancements, and sometimes you can't. It depends on the book, and if they think that the book is going to sell well or not. It comes attached with that the hypothesis of getting an advanced page rate or not. But for an artist in particular, it's pretty important to have it, because I spent, when we did Generation Gone, we didn't have any advancement, and I spent a few months working with zero pay. And I did, I took that into consideration when we were starting to prepare for the book, and we saved money and stuff like that. But still, it's pretty tough to do a book like that, and I hope I don't have to do it again like that.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly hard for a penciler to do that, because
because we spent, as I was saying, months and months and months without getting paid. That's one of the reasons, in fact, that when Kieran offered me the Wicked and Divine gig, I did it in the middle of Generation Gone, and if he hadn't offered me, I probably would have to get some kind of work at Marvel and stuff like that, just in order to get some money coming in, and then go back to Generation Gone.
Do you also do commissions or covers or other stuff like that? Or
I do covers whenever I get asked to. I did a bunch for Mark Miller, for example. I did covers I did recently a cover for DC. I did a few covers for Marvel as well. I did a cover for Seven to Eternity. I do that. I do commissions when I get asked for them. I don't publicize them because they take a lot of time as well. And I get people asking for them every once in a while. So I don't really need to search anymore, because they eat a lot of place in the schedule, and they are very meticulous, and then they are a bit stressful as well, because you don't want to make any mistakes on the commission, and then you need to mail it and pray that it gets there in one piece. And it really is an added stress layer that we don't need on our schedules. But I know that people that do only commissions, for example, others do a lot of commissions per month, that they have a faster style than mine, and they make a lot of money from it. I do a few, and I prefer to concentrate all my efforts on creating stories. That's really, for me, what's most important.
Yeah, I think it would be a shame for you to shift towards that, because your stuff, I think you excel at the storytelling part and creating stories and characters.
Yeah, that's what really that's the other thing also about commissions, is that I don't feel the same thing when I'm drawing them that when I feel when I'm drawing stories. I don't like to draw as much as I like to tell a story. So I love drawing, but I especially love drawing when it is for the purpose of telling a story. And when it's not, when it's just an illustration for like a commission, it's a bit, I feel it's always a bit soulless in one comparison to pages or covers that I'm doing for a specific story, which I feel much more rewarding in terms of the work that I'm putting in the drawing, even though that the commission is probably even better drawn than the pages, because I'm being paid to do it for a specific cover. But it is how I feel actually about it. I prefer to do the stories, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of ground, and
yeah, we did.
We talked about a lot of comics, and we talked about the new things that are coming in as much as we could.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to keep vague because we haven't announced anything yet, and that's the way it goes. But at the same time, I'm so excited about it, because it's the book that I've been waiting to do for like the past 2 years or something like that. I was really pushing for my own creative stuff, and that you can see that a lot of that on my website.
So yeah, thank you very much for coming on.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure, and to do a podcast like this, going through the career. And I heard the other two that you already did, and it's a good fun to listen to creators, I think, going through their entire career. So thank you very much for having me be a part of this.
Lovely.